Hey, welcome to the Fam Lab. We are grateful that you are here today with us. We're going to be listening to an episode that was recorded with Micah Williams. He is the pulpit minister at 7th and Mueller Church of Christ in Paragould, Arkansas. The topic that he and Zach got to talk about was spiritual burnout for parents, just how to deal with that. So we're going to be looking forward to a great conversation. I hope you enjoy it. We'll be back here after the conversation to talk about it ourselves.
All right. Welcome to the Fam Lab podcast. I'm here with Micah Williams. Micah, will you just kind of, first off, introduce yourself and kind of what your role is?
Yes, I'm Micah Williams. I am the pulpit minister at the 7th Mueller Church of Christ in Paragould, Arkansas. I've been here for about 3 years now.
Cool, man. For those of y'all who don't know, I worked with Micah for a year. He was a mentor to me when I was first getting into ministry last year when I was with the kids program at 7th and Mueller. So love having Micah on here, man. Thank you so much for agreeing to be on here with us.
Well, no problem. I appreciate you asking me. I
Yeah,
enjoyed
man.
working with Zach.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yes.
Okay, Micah. So our podcast today's topic is spiritual burnout and how to kind of deal with that as parents. So let's just start it off. Okay, what is spiritual burnout, and how would you describe that?
Well, spiritual burnout is a lot deeper, I think, than people really understand. It's you get to that point where you just don't feel like you can pray. You don't feel like you can read the word. You don't feel like you can do anything, and you don't want to be around people, and you're exhausted, and it compounds. It's like, so I can't pray, and now I can't read the word, and you just get to the point where you just don't feel like you can do anything, and that's you pretty much hit spiritual burnout. And there's a lot of reasons why people reach that point, and a lot of it has to do with us understanding who we are and who God is. That's plays a big part in it.
Yeah. So I was going to ask, how do we typically get to that point where we're just struggling so bad that we just don't want to do anything?
Well, I don't think that it's bad when you do that. And here's what I mean by that. I think that the problem is ourselves. The problem is that we start getting consumed with the thought, well, I can't pray.
Mm.
We get consumed with the thought that I can't read the word. So we eventually give up reading the word. We eventually give up prayer in the way that we should. So the problem is really the individual who arrives at that stage. There's a point, like in Romans 7 talks about our struggle with our sinful nature, and in it he talks about the law. And in the law he says, every time I read the law, I find out that I really don't measure up to the law. So as the law is supposed to be good and righteous, it's always reminding me that I'm not good. So it's like focusing on your prayer. Is prayer good? Yes, it is. But when we start overly focusing on the prayer and what I'm not doing, how I'm not measuring up, or how I'm not reading the word the way I should, and how I can't focus on that, it becomes self-perpetuating. We just continue to unravel it within ourselves and feel a tremendous amount of guilt and shame, and to the place where we're struggling in those valley moments like David describes, where there's points where I'm up on top with God, but then there's those moments where I've got to go down in the valley and I've got to suffer. I've got to bear a cross. And in those moments, I have to understand that it's not necessarily a bad place right now. It's just where I'm at. And I think that's understanding ourselves and where we're at right now emotionally and spiritually. Sometimes it's not in a good place.
So would you kind of compare that with seasons that we get in as parents, where sometimes, especially when you have like newborns, you're not able to go out and socialize like normal, or what would you say to that?
Yeah, you get so busy in life. You've got, I know you've got several kids.
Yeah.
I've had three children of my own at home, and wrestling with my job. My wife went back to school at one point, and then I had all these kids, and finding time. I learned that I'm the one that has to make the time, and I can't make them fit into my schedule. I have to make that time. So my time is before anyone gets up in the morning.
Okay.
I'm intentional in my personal devotional Bible study. And I think in ministry, one of the difficulties that I've noticed with myself early on and other ministers is your sermon preparation, your teaching preparation is your devotional life. And that's wrong. That is a part of it, but your own spiritual, personal devotional life is what is most important. It's you going to the scripture and in prayer and saying, God, speak to me. I don't care what you have to say to the church or what others are saying or thinking. It's what you're saying to me at this moment, and really listening to what he's trying to tell us.
Yeah. So, no, I love that. So would you mind taking us through kind of your morning routine? I know, I would probably benefit from, hearing someone's routine that, is more set than what mine is. So yeah, just take us through kind of your typical morning, if you don't mind.
Well, I have for example, like this is my one in my office. I have this paper, and it is the whole Bible, every chapter. So my goal is to read through the whole Bible in a year, Old Testament once and the New Testament twice. So I mark it all off, and then when I'm done with the book, I'm done with the book. I can move on to the next one. And at home, I have another one, and in the office, I have one. But I try to read through 3 chapters in the Old and a couple in the New. And I'm very intentional in reading it. I pray before I read. I pray that God may open my eyes, that I may see his word and hear it. Mm-hmm. And when I'm done with that, I write some stuff in my journal about what I just read. And then I have a prayer journal that I write in that people ask me for prayers and I pray for them, but this is specific. Like the first thing I do is I pray for my family. I pray for my daughter every day and my daughter's husband that she doesn't have yet. I pray for my son and his wife that she doesn't have yet, that God's working on her heart and preparing her. I pray for my other daughter who's married, that she'll be a good mother. I pray for my grandchildren. I pray for my son-in-law. And then I pray for my wife, that she can be a spiritual impact, that God helps her. And then I get into my own personal life that, I've got big one up there. Things that I'm trying to do better is to tell people I love them, to be more emotional sometimes in an appropriate way, but still be bold and courageous and things like that. Then I write out stuff that's going on in my life and I pray over them. And I'm able to go back and reflect on things transitions, things that I've been through in my life that has helped me, that I've seen where God has literally brought me through that. So
yeah.
It's been very, very helpful for me.
No, I love that. I love the idea of proactive prayers. I'm not gonna lie, it is a little hard for me to think about my kids' future husbands and wives right now, just with them being so little. Yes. But man, that's such a good idea. When did you start doing that?
I've been doing it for a while, actually, before even probably my daughter was even married. But it's not as intentional as now. Right. Like now, it's a little bit more intentional with my son and my other daughter. That God works on their spouse's life right now. That He's molding them and shaping them as He does my children, and I pray for them and their spiritual life and their ability to continue to grow in Christ every day. It's just something that's non-negotiable. I just do it.
Right. No, I mean that's powerful. That's powerful stuff. So, Michael, we kind of have we're both Harding people, and I'm sure that a lot of the people listening to this or have a lot of church background. So I just want to kind of ask this next question. I grew up going to church on Sunday night, Wednesday night. Then I go to Harding and we have chapel every single day. And then,
Yes.
we've got small groups on, Monday nights. And now, my kids are in school and my kids are going to Bible classes. And I just, how do you do all that and not get burnout?
I can just speak for myself. I remember when I first got converted, there was a deacon in the church who told me, he said, you need to slow down. You're going to get burnt out. And I took that more as a challenge than a caution. And I have a motor. I'm saved by God's grace. That's what gets me going all the time. Just remembering that God's grace saved me. I don't deserve it, but I have been blessed beyond my measure, my means to even comprehend God's love. And I just, that's what motivates me personally. And it carries on into all aspects of my life. And devotional and prayer is just one of them. But I do get to those moments where I'm in the valley moments, the difficult moments, a lot of things going on in the world. And I gets back to what we originally talked about is then you start thinking, well, I'm not praying enough. I'm not praying hard enough. Okay. I'm not reading enough. I've got other books that I'm trying to process and I'm not even reading those. And you get to a point where you don't even want to be around people. Those are times I know I'm burned out to where I have to escape everything. And those are hard moments for me personally to do that. But those are clear signs that I must do that. But in the midst of that struggle, in the midst of looking at yourself and saying, well, I don't measure up. I'm struggling in prayer. I am struggling in my devotional life, are reminders. That what they literally are is reminders that I am not who I'm going to be. And what I mean by that is in 1 John 3, it says that we are not, pull the passage up, 1 John 3, it says, if I can find that real quick, there it is. It says that, beloved, we are God's children now, and what we will be has not yet appeared. But we know that when he appears, we shall be like him because we shall see him as he is. So I'm never going to be what I'm supposed to be. You will never be who you're supposed to be. And we're not going to be fully who we're supposed to be until the resurrection. So I'm reminded of those struggle moments that I have with myself. I lean even more on God's grace, even more on his peace, even more on the Holy Spirit that empowers me to know that I will never be perfected. I will always struggle. I will always have that. This is where I am, and I'm not measured up to that where I want to be, who I want to be. And I understand that, and I may never get there, but in the moment that I am right now is realizing that and then just leaning even more upon Jesus and leaning upon his power and his presence and his Holy Spirit and not upon what I'm doing or not doing.
Right.
That causes me to feel even more anxiety, more depression, more struggle, that it's not about me. I'm not doing anything. I need to lean upon Jesus. And I think we all get to the place where we think that we have to lean upon ourselves. And we come down on ourselves even harder. I'm going to read you another passage in 1 Corinthians 4 that's really helped me. It says, but to me, it is a very small thing that I may be examined by you or by any human court. In fact, I do not even examine myself, for I am conscious of nothing against myself. Yet I am not by this acquitted, but the one who examines me is the Lord. So we have this perception that, well, others are looking at me, they're looking down on me, they're not seeing where I should be in my life right now. And it could even be your wife, it could even be your children, it could be people that you're closest to. Well, he's not really where he should be. And then you feel some kind of guilt. But Paul says, like, no one judges me. Nobody can judge me. You can't examine me. And then Paul says, I don't even examine myself. I don't even judge myself. The only one who judges me is God. And that was it was a big relief for me to know that I don't have to worry about anybody else. And I don't even have to worry about my own self, being critical of my own self, because I'm not judging myself. God's going to judge me, and God knows my heart.
Yeah.
And as long as my heart is pure and I'm trying and I want God in his presence, then, I'll be okay.
So you mentioned, when you said, I can't do this myself. How do we get to that point? How do we get to that point of, like, self-realization where we understand, like, I can't do this by myself? Because I know a lot of times, like right now with my 3-month-old, man, I had him by myself this last weekend, and there were hours where he was just crying. And man, I was just, like, I just thought to myself, like, man, I'm a terrible dad. Any other dad can do this, but I can't. Like, how do we get to that point where, what are some things we can do to get better at that?
To realize that that's the problem.
Yeah.
To realize that I can't do this right now. I can't. I'm not capable. I'm not where I would like to be. And it's understanding that in yourself, that you're not where you want to be. And that's okay. It's not something you have to be extremely hard on yourself. It's just the realization that is where you are. But that doesn't mean that's where you're going to be.
Right.
It is where you are. And knowing that in the present doesn't mean that that's where you're going to be. And when you don't live up to where you want to be, that's an indication that you never will. And no matter where I'm at right now in my in my life, in my season, or another season ahead, I will never, ever be what I would like to be. And it's understanding that in yourself. But I'm always leaning upon Jesus to make me better. And sometimes then that's where I draw back. Well, I'm not, and I can't. And then that's when I say, but thanks be to God for his grace. And I'm like, oh, I get it. I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah.
It's all his grace. It's not me. It's him. And it's really getting deep in his grace, getting deep in his peace and his mercy. It's the whole Romans 5 that, I've got to lean upon him and what he's done, not me. And I think that's the biggest struggle.
I feel like grace is one of those things that is so hard to just understand, but man, once it hits you, it's just so freeing,
It is. It is. It is the most freeing thing is in whether it be our devotional lives or our spiritual lives with others, in our workplace, at our home. It's, I'm a flawed person, and I need God, and I need his grace. It's not an excuse for me to continue to sin, but it's the realization that I do sin, and not pretending like I'm not going to, or I don't. I always will. And there's sometimes sins that I commit that I don't even know I'm doing, the presumptuous sins that David prays about. But there are other intentional sins I know I need to get through. And the only way I can do that is by God's grace.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I feel like we sometimes we look at other people and we're like, at least I'm not sinning like that guy. But man,
yes,
but we all are. Mike, let's turn just a little bit, and I'm going to ask you. You mentioned that you were told when you were younger to slow down. Okay, so I'm going to ask, or I want to ask, how important is rest?
Well, like I said, rest is very important. Now, like I said, I'm just saying from my ministry context, when I don't want to be around people, I know that's time I got to get away.
Yeah.
And that's my sign. That's just my own personal. I know when it's going to hit. I know when it is. It's visible. It's clear to me, and it means that I've got to go away. like Jesus did. He had to get away,
Mm-hmm.
and I got to get away. And sometimes that means pulling out for 3 or 4 days. Sometimes it's, I don't go to work.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just stay at home, man.
Yeah.
I just stay at home, and I just unwind and relax and turn my phone off. I think our phones are a big thing. I think they're a problem sometimes. I think they have to be turned off,
Yeah.
and it's hard for people to do it.
Yeah. No,
So hard.
I agree 100%. How do you find rest? How did you find rest as a young parent or as a parent with young kids or with teenagers? How did you do that?
I put them to bed at 9:30.
Yeah.
You ain't gonna get up out of bed, guys. You're going to bed at 9:30, and that's my time.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's just the way it is, man. Early devotionals before they get up, and then at 9:30.
Yeah.
I used to tell myself I'll sleep when I'm dead, which I don't. That wasn't probably a good philosophy back then, but
Yeah. No.
you know,
I feel like that's the phase where we're at right now. There's always one kid that's up at night, and then there's always one kid that's up early in the morning, and we just got to get through this stage.
yes, yeah, and you will,
Um, so let's go a little bit with. So say you're stressed. Say you're feeling that burnout coming. How do you cope with stress? Like, I know you mentioned getting away, but what would you say to somebody that asks you, how do you cope with stress as a parent or as a working individual, whatever?
I work out.
Okay.
I work out for a minimum of an hour a day. I have to work out. I have to. It's what slows my mind down. It helps me concentrate. It helps me to relax. And I just do that early in the morning too. I get up, I have my devotional life, my prayer life, and then I hit the gym.
Yeah.
Like immediately. And that's how I do it. I know it's changed for me over the years. Like now, when my wife goes to work or my daughter went to school, that's when I would
Mm-hmm.
go. But now it's just whenever I want to go because I've got nobody at home.
Yeah.
But I think it's making time for yourself
Okay.
to for everybody else's benefit to do some kind of exercise. I just think it's important. I really do. I think our bodies are a temple and we have to take care of them.
Yeah. I've noticed recently that I've got what I call dad guilt, where if the kids are up or if Jordan has the kids, I feel like I have to be there helping. And so I've kind of put off the exercise or, just the mental health side of it, I guess, for me. And I've noticed that, man, that doesn't help a lot of the times. You know what I mean? It ends up stressing, I'm stressed out, and then
Yes.
it just trickles down to the kids and my family.
Yeah.
And no, I mean, I think you're 100% right. Once you find what helps you with stress and how to deal with it healthy, in a healthy way, you just got to do it.
Yes.
So,
I agree. And I think it's also I don't want to get off of this point that when you feel that you don't measure up is a clear indication that you need to lean upon God's grace. It's okay. It's like it's God telling us, this is why I sent my son.
mhm.
This is why I died for you.
Yeah.
Because you can't. And it's a reminder every time when I get overwhelmed. It's like, you know what? I'm not the Savior. I'm not God. I need Him. And the closer I am with God, the better off others are around me.
Yeah.
When I'm close with God. And it's just a reminder, you're not in charge. You have no control except over yourself.
Yeah, man, amen to that. So we're on I would say the downward trend of time that we have left, but I just want to ask you just a couple more questions, if you don't mind. Um,
Mhm.
what would you say to the notion that burnout is an epidemic?
I think the biggest epidemic on burnout, I think it's tied to our phones.
Mm.
I really do. It's can you even put your phone away? Like and I'll give you an example. Like in my office where I study it in my own devotionals in the morning, I don't bring my phone in there. I turn my phone off when I go to church. There are times where I have to turn it off. I've got a little old school clock in there. That, like, if I want to know the time, I can look at that. But I'm not going to have an excuse to have to pick up my phone or have that phantom buzzing that I think might go off. Or, I've realized those are true things that actually happen. So I have to get a real alone time with God, which means I got to cut that device off. And I think the devices, our phones, internet, somebody going to reach me, somebody needs me, is just not true.
No, man, we were talking about this, almost the phone thing with our youth group, and the number one thing that was said was, well, what if I miss a notification? It's not even that you are being needed, is what if someone does need me and I can't respond?
Yes.
So I think
that's right.
I think you've got something with that, the whole phone thing.
Yeah.
So if I'm going through struggles or whatnot, what age can I share my struggles about burnout or whatever with my kids?
For your struggle or for theirs?
Either one.
No, I've always been very transparent with my children on their struggles, their issues that they deal with, because if I'm not teaching them, they're going to learn it at school. They're going to learn it from others. In their youth group, somebody else is going to teach them, and I'm very transparent. And I know that they have struggles. I know that they're going through things that are very difficult, and I just tell them. I want to be the one that tells them. And it may be uncomfortable for me to talk about some things, but I want them to hear it from their father, who's going to love them through it and give them the best advice they need, instead of somebody else. So I've talked about everything with my children, from sex to their problems of where they fit in at their school, and things that I've been aware of with them that you don't want to. You want to lead and not be led. Talk about and being intentional about how we do things with our kids. Intentional in raising them. I was intentional with my children. So was my wife. We saw what we wanted them to be, and there are times they fell short, and we told them it's okay. We still love you, and God loves you, and you'll make it. It'll be fine. But I was honest with them too, very honest.
Yeah.
And you know me, I'm a pretty honest guy.
I know.
So I was very upfront.
Yeah. I think it's really, really good for kids to see their parents struggle, but then get through it with each other, and not in a bad way, or I don't know.
That's right. And even little things like, me and my wife thought, everybody's got their philosophy on conflict, how you fight, especially in front of your children. Ours was, let's just go at it. And we did. But at the end of the day, we reconciled with each other, and then we kissed each other, and we told each other we loved them in front of our children as we did that. So they knew that even in their life, they're going to run through times where they're not going to get along with somebody. There's going to be a conflict. But they saw that it can be resolved, that it can get fixed, that it is real. That I'm not trying to pretend to be something that they could never be themselves. This is what it is. This is reality. This is life. And we lived it in front of them, and we're very honest with them. And when it comes to devotionals, I'll tell you this, when it comes to devotionals, I was going to pull this little picture out. Hopefully you can see it. Big one that just stands out to me with my children that's Presley and Jalen. And it was not an option for my children not to read the Bible every night before they went to bed. They were going to read their Bible. They were going to, no more toys, no more TV, no more game stuff. Go to your Bible, go to your room, lay down, read your Bible, say a prayer, and then go to bed. And that was just, there were times they didn't want to do it, but man, I can just tell you, down the line now, it didn't hurt them.
Right. And what age did y'all start that? Just as soon as they could read?
A little. Oh yeah, as soon as they could read. But even there, like Jalen, she couldn't read, but Presley would go in there and read to her at night, the Bible. You know what I'm saying? It was, looking back at that picture, I love it now.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
And there were times where it was a struggle. Hey, they didn't want to go to bed. They were, But I said, look, this is what you're going to do. And they did it. And my kids love Jesus.
Yeah.
And I'm thankful for that. And little things like that, I think, were impactful for them.
Right. I think a lot of parents struggle sometimes with the whole timing of it. Like, well, we're only at church for maybe an hour a week, or, if they just come on Sundays, or if you go on Sunday and Wednesdays, maybe 3 hours total, 3 hours times 52. I'm not a math person, but that's only 150 hours or something like that. So
That's right. And what I've tried to teach people at church or wherever I've been is the church is there to reinforce what you're already teaching at home. That's
Love
it.
that.
We're not here to teach your kids, man. We're here to reinforce what's already been taught, so they don't feel like they're just being taught by mom and dad and there's nothing else out there. I mean, that's why we go to church, to encourage each other, to lift each other up. And they go to church and hear it from ministers, youth ministers, or Bible class teachers, what they've already learned. And it's just reinforced to them. And it's positive. It's encouraging for them to hear that.
Yeah. Do you think that might be why so many people feel that burnout is they're only wanting it to happen at church, the spiritual development, and then when it doesn't happen,
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I go to church to be uplifted by others. When I see them going to church, when I see them studying the Bible and their lives are changing and things are going well with them, that's what motivates me. There's nothing better that I like in ministry than watch people actually change their life. Real, you can see it, measurably see it in people's lives. And I know that I'm a tool for them to help them, but I'm not the one doing it. I'm not arrogant enough to think that I've had anything to do with it, but I'm being able to watch it and participate in it with them. And that's life changing. And that's the beauty of church. It's the beauty of encouraging each other. And that's what the Bible teaches us to do. So that's how I view it. Instead of like, man, I got to go to church and, I got to sit there or I'm going to burn in hell. That's nothing in the Bible that teaches it.
Yeah. Yeah. That fear of only going so you don't burn in hell, I feel like is an old school teaching or whatever that I think most of us have gotten. And I just, man, that'll make you not want to go, just that alone. What's one piece of advice someone gave you as a parent that you would want to share to other parents?
Well, like I said, it's being intentional. It really is, and I cannot emphasize that enough. Is being intentional in raising your children. It's saying that I want my children to lead and not be led. And in the world that we live in today, they have so many influences, so many people telling them all kinds of different stuff, and they get confused and whatnot. But for me and my children, I never worried about who they hung out with. And I'm saying that my kids hung out with some rough people, very rough people, especially my son. But I never worried about him. I knew he would lead them instead of them leading him. And I know it was intentional raising. And what I mean that is like, well, I did specific things. When we were out, I used to garden. We'd go out in the garden. I'd make them go out there with me every year. And sometimes they didn't like it, but it was like, this is what God does. Yeah. This is his soil. These are his seeds, and watch it grow. And then we would talk about sun rising and sunsets out in the yard and say, look what God's done, or beautiful sky and look at God. And we'd fish and talk about God and nature. And then sometimes at home, it was through just talking about what they learned in Bible class. Yeah. And then we'd talk about lessons. And then my wife used to sing hymns all the time, just randomly out in the car, just start singing hymns. And they would join in and sing with her. It was, those were all a part of our devotional, but they were a part of being intentional too with our children. And I think that's important.
Yeah. No.
And like I said, being real and honest with them, like, you know what, you're going through this right now. Here's the time I went through it. You're not alone. I'm not here I'm trying to help you. But at the end of the day, I want my children to stand on their own 2 feet and not have to. My son taught me something very important in ministry and youth ministry that I never really thought about. And that was that and certain people have their parents' faith. They have the faith of their parents or faith of their grandparents, or the parents have the faith of their grandparents. And by the third generation, the kid has to have their own faith, not the faith of their parents, not the faith of their youth group or their kids or the church. It's their personal faith. And it's you helping them discover and develop their own personal faith in God and not your faith. And that's important.
Yeah. No, I love that. That allows them to be able to struggle and not fall away because, they can go back and, to maybe what their parents taught them or what Bible lesson they remember. And they're just not out there by themselves. You know what I mean? They've developed their own faith, and they can, like you said, stand on their own 2 feet. I love that.
Right.
Well, Mike, is there anything that you want to your lasting words about spiritual burnout that you want to leave us with?
Yeah, I will say this, that if you really kind of look in the Bible of those who had, I don't know if you say troubles or trials in all accounts, but there is some of the biggest characters you'll read about in the Bible. Jesus is in the wilderness. Moses is in the wilderness as God is preparing him for ministry. Jesus had to go in the wilderness to face Satan, to go through temptations. John the Baptist was out in the wilderness before he ever went out. And I think that we all have kind of Paul did that too. I have that in my notes. Like Paul, before he ever did ministry, spent some time alone. Like, you have to go through those wilderness moments, those moments of just you and God and wrestling with God, because we are like a spiritual Israel, and Israel means those who wrestle with God. God's people are going to wrestle with Him, and it's okay. And realizing that as the closer I get to God, sometimes the more questions I'm going to have rather than the answers.
Yeah.
And that's okay. That's a part of bearing a cross. That's a part of suffering. That's a part of what He's called us to do. And in those moments of wrestling with children or whatever it is, sometimes those are cross-bearing moments that's going to make me stronger. And I may not see it in the moment, but knowing who I am and knowing who God is and leaning upon His grace, I can grow out of that.
Man, I love that. I love that. Choosing not to just fall victim to the season of burnout or depression or whatever that you may be going through, but choosing to shift that towards, you know what, I may be here, but man, I'm gonna get out of it and I'm gonna be better than ever. Man,
That's right. You'll be strong.
That is powerful stuff.
Yeah.
Micah, again, man, thank you so much. I hope you know how much I look up to you, and man, how much of a mentor you were to me when I'm, during my years in Paragould, and I miss you, bro, and I love you.
Love you too, man. I'm proud of you and your work and serving Christ and His calling for you. It was awesome to watch that process, but you've always had it in your heart. God's always called you, and now you're just doing what He's said. And you're doing a good job at it too, man. Well, so I appreciate you.
I appreciate you, brother. All right, man. Well, I hope you have a good rest of it. Right. Hey, I've been cheering on the Cowboys this year, so
you don't have a choice.
I know. So I am trying to, change as a person too. So
after losses on Mondays, those are my wilderness moments. Those are like, I'm bleak. But then I come to the realization that I don't coach and I don't play, so I don't know why I'm getting upset. You know what I mean?
Oh man, that is so good. All right, brother. Well, man, I appreciate you and have a good one.
Thank you for having me.
What's up, Zach? You did a great job, dude.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah. I know you and Micah worked together. You guys talked about that before. So had you been able to talk to him just about life and things as well when you were interviewing him?
Yeah, it was one of those where I'm glad I was able to talk to somebody that I already knew prior. It just made it conversation a little bit easier. And no, man, we've gone back a little bit. He started working at the church right when we moved to Paragould, and so he was just my preacher for a couple of years, and then I was able to work with him the last year that I was in Paragould. So he's a good dude. Obviously he's brilliant, and it was just a great conversation.
Yeah, you guys had some really good stuff. And so I think we're going to go through a couple of questions, some things that I drew out, and again, great conversation, something I think that all parents tend to probably be concerned about in being burnt out or just tired of all the things that we feel like we are having to juggle, and the things that are demanding our time, and definitely spiritual things and church things and discipleship, helping our kids, all that sort of stuff could be a lot. So I think this is a great topic. Appreciate you guys talking about it. So he had kind of a definition of spiritual burnout, and I want to read kind of my takeaway from that, and then we can kind of discuss what our thoughts are on that and how we might define it. But he kind of defined spiritual burnout from the idea that you're moving from this desire, wanting to read your Bible and pray, but then you just kind of get tired, whether from busy schedules or it may not be as interesting or whatever. You kind of move from being tired and not wanting to going all the way to you feel like you can't do it, that you're incapable of doing it, and so therefore you're not maybe good enough, and so you just feel burnt out in doing spiritual things and reading, praying, things like that. So do you feel like that was a good definition, kind of perspective that he brought?
Yeah, spiritual burnout's one of those things where I don't feel like it happens, like that. It's something that it seems like it just creeps up on us, and then one day you just wake up and you're like, "Woof, I'm just done," And I think that's where it could get so, we can almost normalize it, just because, it happens to all of us, just on different aspects of life. And, we've got 4 kids right now, and this 4th one is, he is a lot. And it's just, every day it's just something new. And, but I thought his definition was pretty spot on, and just the steps that he kind of took us on.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Like you mentioned, it's not just a one day you're good, next day you're not. There's a progression to it, like there are for a lot of things. I think the only thing I would add to it is that you almost don't see it coming. You don't see. Hindsight's 20/20, right? You can look back. Oh yeah, I realize that. Maybe you kind of have an idea toward the end of what you might call the cycle of spiritual burnout or that season or whatever. But I think in the midst of it, it's not something that you are aware of. So that was a really, really good way to describe it. And he's coming from a ministry standpoint too, which is a different perspective, but as parents, I think we have the same idea. We don't really realize maybe how tired or burnt out that we might be until we are there, or someone points it out to us as well. Maybe, I don't know, not something that we always realize of ourselves. Yeah. I also think he had some good ideas on what he does for the intentional time he spends with Jesus, things that he does. He said he likes to get up early in the morning and do that before everybody wakes up. Are there certain things that you do, whether that you've heard from other people that you practice? What are some ways do you feel like you spend time with Jesus? Not to put you on the spot, but
no, we've been trying to do this a lot more recently. And, obviously we may have to skip a day if we get home late or something. But so what we do is we get all of us together, all 6 of us, and we sit in the living room, and we just do family worship. It's like 30 minutes, 20 minutes family worship. And, Jordan or I, we'll just read a chapter of the Bible, whether that's something we're covering in class or something we went over on Sunday. We'll just read through a story, ask the girls some kind of questions. What do you think that meant? What do you think God meant by that? And then we sing a song and we pray. And man, it's so simple, but it's just, it calms us down. Right, we do it right before bedtime. And again, we're not perfect at it, but our kids love it. Parker's kind of learning the ins and outs of it, but she just loves, singing with her big sisters. And it's really nice for us to kind of sit down with the family, calm, everyone's calm, and then we kind of end our night doing something like that together. So that's something just recently that we've started doing. But it's just, man, it's taking some intentional time.
No, I think that's good. And giving yourself grace in that, there are days where, man, there's no way you're getting, home at 10 o'clock, or it's just been one of those days that, as we know as parents, like, how can I trying to fit in one more thing? And so we don't do what we would like to do. And I think that's good, though. You do it when you can. And again, there are seasons of life that you and Micah talked about. There are seasons of life where we're busier than others. I think there's times where when we're younger, we have a little more time and energy before we have kids, maybe. But then also when you've got young ones, again, as you mentioned, Mueller, right? He's got needs that, are going to throw you off maybe on routines and schedules and stuff. And he's going to be up late at night. And so, or up early in the morning. My kids definitely get up really early sometimes. And so it can throw us off. But I think that's really good. Ending the day, that's a really good suggestion, really good idea that you do. We have more recently have been more consistent in praying every night with our girls, and something that obviously is good and we want to do more about. But one thing that for myself as a parent, and again, like you said, not always perfect at this, but I try and be intentional about it. And there's things that I feel like I could now improve on doing this, but I try to not look at my phone first thing in the morning. And I know some people use their devices and things for Bible studies and stuff, and that's great. And for them, if that works, that's awesome. But I feel like, even just having it at my bedside, I'm gonna do it starting tomorrow. Honestly, I've thought about this. I just haven't done it yet. I'm gonna move my phone away from my bedside and put it still in my bedroom, still accessible. I think some people have moved it out into the living room or kitchen or whatever. That's great, but I want to move it away where it's not within reach, where I can just sit up in bed, grab it, and then that temptation can go away. But I try not to look at that, and I would rather either read my Bible or pray, or maybe go sip a cup of coffee and just listen to the birds, kind of have a moment. I think that would be helpful in that we are, again, being intentional, spending time with Jesus. Jesus did that, right? I wrote down some great things that Mike has said. One of them being proactive prayers, and made me think about how Jesus was very intentional. If Jesus does it and feels the need to spend time with God alone, without distraction, why do we give the excuse that we're too busy, where we don't have time? Like, I don't know of anybody that was more busier than Jesus. He was also very intentional about his time. So not to guilt trip us, but I think to motivate us, obviously, to be more like him. But
right,
I think there are. Oh, go ahead.
No, sorry. We both like John Mark Comer, and we've read a couple of his books, and I can't. I think it's the Elimination of Hurry book that he said, when we're the busiest, that's when we need to find silence and solitude the most. Not when
Sure.
when there's not a lot going on, then we can make time. But when our schedules are just chaotic, like that's when you need to kind of sit back, listen to God, find some time to just sit back and, really just listen, I guess.
Yeah. And I've only got one that is busy. Grace is doing lots of different things at school, and those that have multiple kids that are in sports or band or whatever, like they're having to figure out, okay, you got to go this to this place at this time on Tuesday, and I'll be there on Thursday, and like balancing all those schedules, it's super tough as parents. And so I think we sometimes see other people maybe post or have conversations, or we view them as having it all together, and we see them as, man, wow, they've got it all together. They seem to be balancing their schedule. They seem to be really intentional about again avoiding spiritual burnout or just being good disciples. And so we fall into that comparison trap. And Micah had some good thoughts on he referenced Romans 7, that whole idea of I do what I don't want to do, and I don't do what I do want to do, and all that, like the whole comparison of I want to do these things, but then I guilt trip myself, or I compare myself, or I just feel bad for not doing it more. You feel like that's a thing that parents struggle with?
Oh, 100%, man. Like, it's so easy to compare ourselves to what we see, because typically social media is just the highlights, it's the good. And, and I know I do it all the time. I'm not going to put, my rough patches for people to see or, but, no, I mean, I think that, we see these families that have, multiple teenagers, and they're at church every Sunday and every Wednesday. And I'm just like really in awe, I'm like, wow, how do y'all do it? I feel like I'm going crazy sometimes, with, just juggling my kiddos. But, then I see people at church, and instead of being like jealous or think, man, they've got it going on, I have no idea what I'm doing. I think that's a perfect time to maybe have a conversation of, what are you doing, or how, what are you putting into play that, maybe I could do better at, or, I don't know, just different things like that. And instead of looking at it with, envy or jealousy, just maybe look at it, try and find, a learning point from it, or use their example to do something different. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I asked them, hey, it seems like you're at this point where you've got things going well. They may say, you have no idea, right? It definitely is not. But asking them for advice or tips that they do, and, like the progression of spiritual burnout, it's not just one day on, one day off. The progression of becoming more and more like Jesus is that you have to work on it, and it's going to happen over time. It's not going to be one day that you finally achieve that. As Paul says, it's not not something that you finally have gotten there. It's definitely a progression. So I think again, one thing that Micah said I thought was really, really good was to lean on God and lean on Jesus for peace and comfort. And ask for help. And so if you feel like you are at the point where you realize, man, I'm really tired. Going to church is really a lot. I feel all these pressures from other people or myself on trying to be a better Christian, and the whole idea of spiritual burnout. I think we've got to. That's the time, as you said, lean into God. Ask people for some help and guidance. Maybe you feel like you're doing too much. Maybe it's time to look back and see, hey, are we needing to take some things off of our schedule, off of our plate, so that I know I can spend time with God? I don't know, just doing some reflection on that. But I do think it's encouraging to know that we're all trying to do our best and to work on our relationship with God. And so no one's perfect on it. Something that Mike had mentioned as well. Like we need God. We don't have it all together. And so if we're doing things that we feel like are either pulling us away from God, or we feel burnout on doing stuff, seek guidance, ask for help, and know that we're here to encourage one another with that. Any final thoughts on this episode? You guys did such a great job.
No, I mean, I'd like to sit here and say that spiritual burnout doesn't happen to me, but or to Jordan, but I think it's one of those things that it happens to everybody, a little bit, and we just, like you said, we just gotta communicate and do what we can to do the best job we can. So I think a lot of times our pride gets in the way, and we want to do things, and we want to do the best job we can, and we want to say, I don't need help, but that's why we're here. That's why I'm thankful that I've got you two, Kyle and Matt, to kind of get ideas from, and that doesn't need to stop with just my career path, but my parenting as well. So we've got a large group of people to pull from, and a lot of people that have done it way longer than I have. So we just need to use what we've got, use what God's given us to help us out.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I know. I think realizing that we're all in a season, and some seasons are more difficult than others, and so we need to seek guidance and help, and be there for others when they need it as well, and realize we got to give ourselves grace, and not put so much pressure on ourselves, and be okay with maybe feeling tired right now. That's not a bad thing. I think that was a good thing that Micah said. It's not a bad place, but we don't want to stay there. We want to realize this is where I'm at, and I'm going to try and get through this, and then at some point it's going to end, and things are going to be better. So not giving up on that. But man, I really appreciate you having a good conversation with Micah, and we appreciate you guys listening to us. We'd love to get your feedback. Share this episode if you feel like this is something that somebody else might need to hear. Reach out to us if you have any topic ideas. I know we're always looking for more ways to provide good resources. We appreciate you listening, and have a blessed day.